Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are honored to speak with Clive Matson, the poet, teacher and mentor whose influential work has impacted generations of writers and positioned him as a key figure of the Beat generation as well as in the broader landscape of American poetry. Born in Los Angeles and raised in Southern California, Clive discovered poetry at 14. He briefly attended the University of Chicago before leaving to pursue writing full-time, and later earned a Master of Fine Arts from Columbia University. He eventually found himself with New York City's Beat generation, mentored by Allen Ginsberg, Diane di Prima, and Herbert Hanke. Clive developed a fearless, direct style and a lifelong commitment to emotional honesty in art. Clive's work is grounded in beat poetry, emphasizing spontaneity, authenticity, and a rejection of conventional hierarchies, while also exploring the depth of human emotion and consciousness. He has published over a dozen collections, including Mainline to the Heart, Heroine, and his latest, Hello Paradise, Paradise Goodbye. His honors include East Bay's Best Writing Teacher 06, the City of Berkeley Lifetime Achievement Award 2012, and Lifetime Beat Poet Laureate 2021. Today we'll hear from Clive about his new work, his contributions to American poetry, his crazy child method, and the continuing relevance of poetry in contemporary life. Hello, Clive, and welcome.
Thank you, Michelle.
To begin, you grew up in Southern California. How did that environment shape your early poetic voice?
Well, when we say Southern California, we usually mean Los Angeles in the northern part of San Diego County. And that influenced me, not the city of Los Angeles. I had a little place at the edge of the ranch, and the ranch was backed up against Chaparral Hills that were not inhabited except by scorpions and coyotes and rattlesnakes. And there was a dry creek. Well, all the creeks in the semi-desert of Southern California are dry most of the time. And there was a little dry creek at the edge of the ranch where I'd like to go and hide. And it was overgrown by manzanita, and I'd sit in the shade of that creek under the manzanita, which sounds strange because you can't get under manzanita. The branches are prickly and they're low to the ground. But this manzanita grew on the edge of the ravine, so it cast shade, and you could kind of lean up against it. And that was my private place, and I could commune with nature and my own thoughts. I don't think I ever talked to the rattlesnakes, but I imagined they were there.
You were mentored by Allen Ginsberg, Diane di Prima, and Herbert Hanke. Looking back, what lessons from that period have stayed with you, and how do you see the Beat's influence in today's culture?
That's a lot of questions at once. The person of those who influenced me the most was Herb Hanke. He was like a second father to me, and I used to walk the streets with him. And he was, I was 20, and he at that time was 50, so there was quite an age difference between us. But I was warned to stay away from him. The first person I hung out with on the Lower East Side when I first got to New York was Irving Rosenthal. And Irving was very clear that I should stay away from Hanke. And he listed the people who had become drug addicts and had ruined their lives and left the city because of their friendship with Herb Hanke. And I looked up one day and there was this guy talking to me, and he was perfectly kind and perfectly respectful, and it was Herb Hanke. And that surprised me. But I believed him. I believed he was a real person, and that he actually cared about me, and I just thrived under his tutelage. He would talk to anybody, and with respect, and he was curious about everybody's journey. So that was like an image that I've followed ever since, and it helps in teaching that I don't make a decision about whether the person in my class is any good or not. I just assume they have talent and they're there for a good reason, and it's my job to bring that out. And Herb talked to everybody like that.
So you maintain this tradition of mentorship?
Yes.
Very famous line from Ginsberg's The Howl. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness.
Starving, hysterical, naked, yes. I think it's mostly underground today, but my publisher calls themselves the New Generation Beat Foundation, that there's a new generation of beats, and they felt that a wrong was done to the beats by the academies. And somebody, and I don't think it was Sankey, it might have been Irving, but somebody reported that one of the beats really knew how to handle the academies, just knew exactly what to say to them to take away the sting of the beats just being these dumb, instinctive rebels who didn't have anything to say. But it didn't work. The beats were pretty much ostracized by the academies. And they coined a word, what is it? Mainstream poetry, have you heard that? The poetry that's called mainstream, I don't think is mainstream. In 1959, there I am at the University of Chicago, and I'm in an advanced literature course, not because I've been there many years, but because they do a test when you enter the university to see what your knowledge level is. And my knowledge level in literature was equivalent to the third year MFA students. And the professor, we were studying Milton, and the professor said, well, why did Milton write this book, Paradise Lost? And I'm sitting in the back row where the boys from the farmland sit, and I raised my hand, and I hadn't done that very often, so the professor, of course, noticed, a very nice guy, noticed and asked me, and I said, well, Milton thought that life was like that. The good and evil were constantly in contest, and he wanted to lay that out for us. And the professor, I remember every word, he said, that's a good answer, but it's not the answer I'm looking for. And then he said what his answer was, which was that Milton had a quarrel with the King of England, and in Paradise Lost, he cast the King of England and the devil, and he was the devil. Milton was the devil. So that's why Milton is a sympathetic character in that book. And I liked my answer better than his. His answer told me what you have to do in order to succeed in the academies, which is kind of to know the historical and literary gossip about the writers, not about what they were actually doing. And that same year that I was there, I played ping pong in the basement with some of the other students, and one of them, Elliot, told me he knew everything that was happening in Chicago and in the university. He said, I should go to this reading at Gate of Horn that this guy, Irving Rosenthal, who was the editor of Chicago Review, which was an academic national review of some repute, and he had done an issue that was full of beat writers. He had connected with Allen Ginsberg and asked Allen Ginsberg for other writers. Well, Allen always did this. He said, if you're going to publish me, you also have to publish, and he listed a whole lot of other beats that should be in the journal. And Irving loved them and put them all on the journal, but he had to run it by the head of the school, and they said, Irving, you can't do this. And Irving said, oh, yes, I can. And he took the issue out and made it the first issue of Big Table, which was a journal that somebody else was editing. And they did a reading at the Gate of Horn, which is a music hall in Chicago. And Elliot told me we had to go to that reading. And I went, and there were the beats. He had Corso reading, and he read, and more beats read. And it was loud, enthusiastic, and understandable. You could understand every word they were saying. And there's a tinge of rebelliousness about them also. And they were just a world apart from what I was learning in the classroom. So I like them, but it's more like they followed me. And I left school. I found a girlfriend. We traveled through Europe, and I had learned that I could get to Europe by taking a freighter and working on the freighter across to Europe, and that it was easiest to get one of those jobs by hitchhiking north to Montreal. It was easier to do it from Montreal. So I was just checking north on the New York State Freeway. This guy picked me up, and I told him what I was doing. He said, "You stay with me. The Beats are reading on the Lower East Side this weekend, and you should go and hear them. And then you can go to Europe." And I went to the reading. Ginsberg was there, and Irving Rosenthal was there, and Diane DePrima. And I got all their numbers. And I thought, I'm going to look these people up when I get back from Europe. And I did. I stayed with Irving for a while and heard all the gossip. And he's the one who told me to stay away from Herb Hunke. There's a guy here you shouldn't talk to. But I was walking on the streets, and of course I ran into Herb Hunke. He lived on the streets. And here was this kind man who treated me with respect, not like some kid who needed to be wised up in the way of literature. And it was very refreshing. And he and I spent a lot of time together walking the streets and talking.
The Beats often remembered as revolutionary and controversial. What was it like to live and create within this world, and what relevance do you see it having for contemporary art and politics of nowadays, that everything is so controlled by social media and AI?
What are they doing that for anyway? Yeah, I don't get it. But at the time there was no, so I'm 20, I'm rebellious. And the rebellion didn't bother me at all. And I certainly, my grandmother was, on my mom's side, my maternal grandmother was a communist. And she would say whenever we, in the family, there were 5 of us, plus mom and dad, whenever we got upset with something, she said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Just go have fun. Capitalism will fall of its own weight." And it didn't. It's still growing, as we know. I mean, with AI, how could it not be growing? I really like what Amiri Baraka, then Leroy Jones, said about who the Beats were. And he said, it's just a collection of all sorts of people, all classes and all persuasions, who agreed that society sucks. Well, it wasn't just the Beats who thought that. That was part of the, it was on the air that something needed to change. When I get to this point in a conversation, I remember what the history was and what Allen Ginsberg's degree was. You expect Allen Ginsberg studied literature. Well, I'm sure he did, but his degree is in sociology. And the Beat is a sociological movement before it's a literary movement. What did we have? We had quite a bit of trouble, and then there was World War I, and then there was the Depression, the crash of '29, then there was World War II. So the culture was having a lot of trouble staying, on its feet. And World War II especially was like an anvil, a heavy anvil on the culture. And when it finally ended, it's like, who are we? And what is life about? And there's a, what's that line in Eliot? Let's see if I can find it. I can always remember the first few lines of Prufrock, but after that, "Let us go then, you and I, while the evening is spread against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table." And it says, "Let us go through certain half-deserted streets." And there's cheap hotels, and streets then follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. "Oh, don't ask what is it, let us go and make our visit." So he doesn't say what the question is. And I love that rhyme, "Don't ask what is it, let us go and make our visit." Well, what's he saying? He's making distance between him and whatever the current concerns of the time were. And I look at that and I think, well, the question is the same one, which is, how the F do we survive this time that we're in? And it went unanswered. But when Ginsberg came around, it was very obvious what the question was, which is, how do we get this anvil off our backs and become human beings? What is a human being? And Ginsberg liked being a showman. So part of it was partying, getting high, having sex, having fun, and hence the beard and the bongos, and hence needing the academics who were still caught in the anvil and with the neckties and the very constrained behavior, needing them to approve of the beats in order to get a foothold in the literary world. And somebody said, and I don't remember who it was, but someone watched Ginsberg deal with the academics and said he knew just how to deal with them and to calm their fears and invite them into the beat world. But he didn't do a very good job because they still felt that the beats were animals and dumb and not worth consideration. And they devised their own idea of what poetry was, and they called it mainstream. Now, wait a minute. I think they used the wrong word, and my publishers agree with that. The New Generation Beat Publications. It's a new generation of beat publications, and the organizer of that publishing house said that she felt a serious wrong was done to the beats, and that she was here to revive them, and that it turns out, looking at her publications, that there are a lot of people around, young writers especially, who like the beats and want to write like them. And they're more mainstream than the people that the academics call mainstream. Steve Cowett wrote an essay, which see, called The Mystique of the Difficult Poem. And he said, you ask what's the difficult poem? You can flip open almost any academic magazine and try to read the poems, and they're hard to understand. And that's a stark contrast to the Gate of Horn reading, where you could understand every word the beats were saying. You didn't have to sit down and try to puzzle them out. They were saying, speaking from the heart, speaking authentically, speaking human emotions. Where was I going to go with this?
And they changed things forever.
And they changed things forever. The Greening of America was the book written about them. They called it, the beats, The Greening of America, bringing life, new energy, youthful energy to the culture.
We talked about this term that maybe doesn't exist, post-beats, in your life. So over time, after this era, your perspective evolved, especially regarding gender and hierarchy. How did those changes shape both your poetry and your teaching?
Very good question. The simple answer is not even the one that you asked, but why did I pull back from the beats? It's because I got tired of somebody handing a joint or reaching in the back pocket for a flask of cheap whiskey, or what was the cheap wine of the time? Not Red Gut, Red Bull, Red something. It's like I had no interest in that. I did end up taking drugs, and I loved heroin and LSD, but they don't. I moved away from them also. I think the academics taking over the word mainstream is a real crime. That the mainstream, what we know from Greek poetry and from Shakespeare and from ancient poetry, it's communication. And it was a way of communicating in a real way with your deep emotions, important emotions, with your fellow species. And that's what the beats were doing at Gate of Horn. And the poetry you see in journals that's called mainstream is something different. It's postmodern. And I think the beats aren't doing post-beat. They're just doing beat still. And it took me quite a while before I would honor my beat past, because that is what I'm doing. People look at this book, and you read a little bit of it, and they say, well, it's beat poetry. Mm-hmm. And it is. Mm-hmm. So that was part of my journey, was moving away from them. Just a lot of things I don't want to be.
Yeah.
But the literary honesty and authenticity of their work is what I took. And it wasn't just Ginsberg, it was Michael McClure and John Wieners, and a youngster who died when he was 23, Alden Van Buskirk, whom we should read. He's really a wonderful, very direct, very clean, very clear writer. And the beats should be mainstream because they're passionate, they're trying to connect, they're talking about something's real in the culture. They're doing the things that we expect and the Greeks expected poetry to do. Sappho would say, treat me as a friend would, show me the favor of your eyes. And what the academics call a mainstream is more like, I'm who I am and that's for you to figure out. When the beats are saying, I'm talking to you as clearly as I can, talk back to me.
You coined the term crazy child, or maybe it's a method that helped countless writers find their authentic voices. Could you explain how it works and how it has informed your own writing practice? The crazy child.
I had a friend who had connections in the northwest in Washington and Oregon, and he came and visited me in the Bay Area and enticed me to go on a trip with him and he knew there was a reading being given every year at Port Townsend, and I went with him and read there and enjoyed it. And afterwards we went to Jack Estes, and he was a teacher at Peninsula College in Washington, and we had a conversation, and he described an exercise that one of his visitors would do in his classes, where he divided the psyche into three parts: the editor, the writer, and the child. And these fit the Freudian scheme of the psyche, with the superego, the ego, and the unconscious. And what he said was, tell the editor and the writer to go away and let the child or the unconscious write whatever it wants. And that's not an easy thing to do, but you get some rough drafts. When you do it authentically, you kind of train yourself to keep your ideas, what good literature is, out of the picture, and write instead what's your impulse, what's the impulse of your heart or your creative unconscious, and let it out and say what it wants. And then you have a rough draft of something. And learning what's good in that rough draft is like learning who you are and what's important to you, and can connect you with the passion that the Beats showed in 1959 at the Gate of Horn reading. And we did that exercise. I came back to the Bay Area and took over John Oliver Simon's classes. He was tired of doing them. And I tried doing that same exercise. Tell the editor and the writer to go away and let the child write. And it worked, but as we kept doing it, it worked better if we used just the term crazy child, because that allowed stuff that the writer and the editor would never consider. So it was a door for the creative unconscious, and the writing got a little wilder and a little more authentic and a little more provocative doing the exercise like that.
And I'm always amazed when I'm giving you a piece of paper with a block of text, like I do.
Yes.
And you can find the good line, the line after the warm-up, the line that really gets to the bottom of things, the best line. You see it immediately. You don't even need to read the whole page. That's amazing.
Thank you. I think it's been in a lot of classes where people are struggling with the same things, and after a while you can feel the energy. And I use that word paleo poetry because I imagine as a species, even though we have accomplished all this and taken over the planet, we're still pretty close to apes throwing mud at each other. And I even feel like the Beats had some of that mud in their conversations, and the people publishing mainstream poetry don't. And I respond much better if I can feel some of that primitive energy or crazy child energy in somebody's writing. I think, oh, they're getting to who they really are.
We're living in a politically correct era.
A little too correct,
Yes.
Yes.
Turning to your latest book, Hello Paradise, Paradise Goodbye. It has been described as reflective and visionary. What inspired this work, and what do you hope readers take from it? And if you please honor us with reading some of your favorite pieces.
Which would be the potato chip.
Potato chip.
Well, one thing that I happened to me growing up on the ranch on the edge of the hills was there were crystals in the hills, and I got interested in crystals. And later on, I would go backpacking in the Sierra, and there's a place where there are crystals called Dinky Lakes at about 10,000 feet in the southern Sierra. And I would go there and I'd find crystals there. It was quite wonderful. When I went up in 1915, and I saw that the lakes there had scum on the edges, and that a lot of the trees were dying. It was a drought year, and there was smoke from a distant fire on the horizon. And I thought, oh, I was following what was happening on the planet, but it wasn't a specialty. But now I couldn't avoid it, because it was, here's this lovely place I had visited, and it was decaying year by year right before my eyes. And I got out my notebook and I started writing this poem. And it took me 10 years to write. And I don't know, we do that in the classes too, is if you get in touch with your passion, you let the passion tell you what to write. And that's what I did. I don't know, I can't remember how I organized it. It just seemed obvious as I was writing it what the next section was going to be. And I was teaching myself in all those classes for that moment. So I came back down from the mountains and continued writing for the next 10 years. So I'll read a section on the potato chip here. Along the way, I met a cellist who somehow fit with this work. I asked her, how did it happen? Because I read with her, and I feel like she gives me an opening for the next line, and I can read them maybe with more confidence than I actually feel. And I feel like, oh, I can perform this. And it was so much fun. We'll be performing at the Marin Public Library on Thursday, and she'll be playing. So that will be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So here's part 21 in Hello Paradise, Paradise Goodbye, and it's called Potato Chips. Light embraces everything, everywhere the same. Into the market for a potato chip. 40 flavors in one cabinet, 50 the next. In the aisle, 450. Ice cream, same count. Same count water, milk, wine, doubled count. Butter, vitamins, power bars, 450, and one chip speaks to you, another to me. Nifty. Profusion, confusion, illusion, contusion, one tinge, infused turmeric, saline blue, perfect for the individual. Another to perfect for me, for you. No waste. Multinationals tuned to your special taste. Feedback looping AI's algorithms slip colors and shapes under your skin. Each unique glow stimulates the high-low dopamine circuit running the show. Choices avalanche, a catastrophe of choices. Bury the sovereign need to choose your own life completely, freely. Made a mistake, kissed a snake. How many doctors will it take? Feed me taste so I won't grok my own. 200,000 years later, flavors today, of course, fresh, and will mesh with our eyes, nose, tongue out stroll through the aisle, married to our senses. Saxophone riffs blow through trees, growl and screech. Ah, geez, so what? It's a potato chip. One salty, tasty tidbit of capitalism, one splotch on the big table. Don't trip. Slippery slope ably greased with jism, someone else's jism. Clang. Your entire being knows you're alone. one among 450 and no touch. Face, chest, arms, hands, thighs, legs, no contact, no leisure, no bone. Skin-covered galaxies inside, opaque. Quote, loneliness, the ache, too deep to grasp. Motherfuck, they got you, got me. We're marketeered. Tsunami caresses the sweet spot, and we splash down in a river of tears. Say it loud, aren't you proud? Look what we're handing down. Stay healthy, work soft, be tender, get fit, stay woke, be cool. Sparkling clear TV screens rotate on wheels, behind wheels, beyond wheels, before wheels, actors, singers, spinning, waving, caressing gently, your fragile, sensitive wrinkles, each one more intimate, and which one will reveal how to be more beautifully yourself. The rich, the healthy, the happy, realized people doing exactly what they want, so you can too. A siren song calling up your tender G-spot place, a smiling, sly, exquisite face proffers one secret desire, yours, mine. Every such spirit is terrifying. Ein jeder Angel ist schrecklich. Feedback looping AI runs the high-low dopamine circuit running the show, designing products to fit your face. Feed me. Feed me taste so I won't grok my own. Through cracks in the mirror you hear the undertone whisper, "Ah, cool it, honey. Soon you'll feel better." Zone out and give them your money. Tears stream your cheeks and you laugh. Laugh. They're acting, dude. They're paid to look like that, so you will try that look. Why? Why do you feel you're a marketing experiment? Because you are a marketing experiment. Turn around and I'm next. Marketeered. Happy-go-lucky, singing a song. How could we go so terribly wrong? In one geologic instant, everything gelled. 13.8 billion years, and we learned how psychology works. We learned how to sell. Take it to the banks, marketers, who would have figured it out without your help, Freud, but thanks. Sexy in the unconscious drives the culture. Say it loud. Aren't you proud? Look what we're handing down. Ably greased with jizz, someone else's jizz. Peril in the garden in peril. Hello, paradise. Paradise, goodbye.
And finally, after decades of writing, teaching, and performing, what continues to make poetry vital for you, and how do you see it helping people navigate the complexities of contemporary life?
I just think there's so much to be gained for capitalism to lie to us in all these various ways. So we used to have to navigate nature, but nature doesn't lie. It is what it is. But figuring out the digital world and what's coming at us in advertising is not easy. And I just think that poetry and song are the venues where we can be real with each other. Not just have a thought that's authentic, but real with our emotions too. It's like authentic communication. I don't think we're going to get anywhere without that. John Curl has a poem in his book about curing the planet, and he says, be kind to your relatives. And the relatives in his poem are the animals and the foxes, as well as human beings. It's like anything that walks on the planet is part of this same beautiful planet we live on, and we need to take care of them.
So now we get to the end of our talk. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And for those interested in exploring this work further, Hello Paradise, Paradise Goodbye is now available. We encourage everyone to continue reflecting on creativity, poetry, and the ways in which art illuminates our lives and society. Thank you very much.
Thank you.